welcome to Let's Talk Software Security. My name is Mark Lambert, Chief Product Officer here at ArmorCode, and I'm joined by Rohan Parak. Rohan, how are we doing?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic, as always. This is really episode 3 in our ASPM conversation. So previously we talked about ASPM being driven by DevSecOps, all of the modern cloud-orientated delivery mechanisms, this intersection of vulnerability management rolling up under ASPM. We talked about how the tool ecosystem is insanely diverse, and how do we build a workflow on top of this diverse ecosystem there where we can plug in and out the best of breed tools that we need, or changing tool landscapes, or new tool that comes in. And then that led us to where we're going to talk about today. So it's not all about cloud, though. It's about organizations that are on this journey, because you can't leverage an ASPM solution for your cloud initiative and then forget all of the other software that's out there. Many organizations have product security programs where they're deploying software to market where they don't manage, or should I say, delivering software to market where they don't manage the deployment. It's actually deployed on infrastructure that they don't manage. This is the traditional way of developing software. Now, what we now have to do is manage the product life cycle of those software artifacts, and then that brings in challenges. I have to start correlating findings and vulnerabilities across the versions. I have to make sure I focus my engineering work in the right places. Plus, I now need a more strict governance process on my delivery. So, Rohan, I know you've been working specifically on this area with a number of the ArmorCode community members. Talk to me about the challenges that organizations are facing and what you see as the path forward in this world where we're continuously delivering software.
Right. And it's an interesting problem, right? And it's not going to go away, because a lot of software is going to be delivered in a way that it's not going to be real time, in a way that the CI/CD part of it, when we say talk about CD, right, it's going to be continuous delivery, not continuous deployment, right? And it will always be on the users of the software in terms of how they want to consume it. Now, there are a few challenges here, right? Number one is every version or every release of a product or a software is different, at the same time not different, right? It's different because it probably has a lot of same code base, and maybe as a result of that, same issue, same vulnerability as well. And it's not different because there are some changes, some enhancements that have been added to the new code base, which means that there might be new vulnerabilities also, or maybe the older ones have been closed. So the challenge that comes often is, how do you make sure that you're managing it in a way that you are, number one, not missing anything, but more importantly, not kind of overwhelming yourself and doing the same work twice. And that's where correlation of these findings across different releases becomes super important, so that you are able to make sure that when you have gone and triaged a finding, or assigned a particular vulnerability to be fixed for a particular developer, right? That is done across different code branches, and as a result of that, different versions as well. So you're able to kind of track them in the different releases, and you're able to kind of manage that as well. Number two is, not a lot of software is going to be fixed on a timely basis, right? And that will happen because there are no patches available, right? There are the dependencies that don't have a fixed version available at the time of release, and release has to go out because it's essentially business also, right? For these organizations. And there are some other ways to mitigate the risk that have been put in place, but the vulnerabilities or findings still exist on those software platforms. Typically, most organizations take a route of exception. Exception is more of an exemption to say that we are not going to fix those vulnerabilities in this software, or more specifically in this release, for next few months or next few weeks. There are two aspects to it, right? One is you want to make sure that it has gone through all the stakeholders. And number two, you are able to go back 6 months down the line and track back and say that the version that we had released 6 months back, what vulnerabilities, what findings were, we had taken exceptions on. So that part of the overall process is something that we are kind of trying to actively work with, and some of enhancements that we have made on our platform also is essentially incorporating that. And it cannot be ignored because it is part of the overall risk management cycle, and making all the stakeholders involved and kind of updated as the product lifecycle goes from releases to releases.
Yeah, this concept of the risk register, right? The things that I know exist but I'm going to accept that they exist. And I also like to think about these two different, there's the concept of changing the state associated with a particular individual finding and say, I'm going to accept the risk of this finding and or what this finding is associated with, versus that exception or where you can say, yeah, I need to fix this. I'm not going to accept it, but I'm going to cover it under my exception plan, and I will mitigate it within a certain period of time, or I will address it. There's other things like that, the POEM report, right? The acceptance and mitigation plan. There's also the CADO, so the continuous authority to operate, where we're doing this on a rapid cycle. And as you said, being able to track the governance of who did that and who approved it is critical for these organizations for internal compliance when it comes to, let's say I'm delivering, as I said, software that's deployed the way I can't manage it. I have an internal governance compliance reason, because when there's a vulnerability that's exploited, we need to be able to document why we said that wasn't an issue. But then also when we're talking about your regulatory compliance as well, I need to be able to provide that documentation too to my GRC team. So yeah, I think this is a key component that a lot of folks are not really looking at when they think about ASPM. They're really kind of like much more focused on the cloud native world, where it's a little bit more, I don't want to say Wild West, but it kind of like, if I have a problem, well, what do? I fix it in the code and I push to production. Can't do that in the product security world. You need a better process. So great conversation, Rohan. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Click like, subscribe, check out the show notes. We'll be including links to our State of Application Security report. We'll also be including links to some Gartner research that touches upon this area as well. So thanks very much, everybody. Stay tuned for our next episode.